close your eyes and let us travel back in time to a place where the sea met the land and where dreams met reality. We are in Egypt more than 2,000 years ago. The waves of the Mediterranean Sea roll gently against the coast, their sound blending with the cries of gulls circling above. The sun, warm and golden, shines upon a city newly built, a city that would become one of the greatest in the ancient world. This city was called Alexandria. It was founded by Alexander the Great, a man whose ambition stretched farther than any horizon. When he stood upon this land, he imagined not just a port, not just a settlement, but a beacon of culture, trade, and learning. A city where the wisdom of the past and the discoveries of the present would come together like waves meeting the shore. In time, Alexandria grew into a place of wonder. Its streets were straight and wide, its harbors filled with ships from every corner of the known world. Merchants carried silks, spices, papyrus, and glass. Philosophers walked slowly beneath shaded colonnades, deep in conversation. Priests, mathematicians, poets, and dreamers all found their way here. But among all the marvels of this city, there was one that shone brighter than the rest. One vision that would live on in memory long after the walls had crumbled. It was the dream of a library, not an ordinary library with a few shelves of scrolls, but a vast collection, a home for all the knowledge of the world. Imagine it now, a place where thousands upon thousands of papyrus scrolls were gathered and guarded, each one filled with words, with thoughts, with discoveries and stories. A place where silence was not empty, but alive with the whispers of wisdom. This was the great library of Alexandria, a dream born from curiosity, a dream born from the hunger of the human mind to know, to understand, to remember. And so, our story begins, with the quiet rising of this dream, a dream that has never truly faded, even though the library itself was lost to the ages. Long before the library, before the scrolls and the scholars, there was simply the land. It was a narrow stretch of earth, where the river Nile flowed gently into the sea. To the west lay sandy deserts, quiet and endless. To the east, the waters of the Mediterranean sparkled like blue glass beneath the sun. It was here that Alexander the Great arrived, in the year 331 before our common era. He was still a young man then, yet already a conqueror, already a legend in his own time. He had crossed mountains and rivers, defeated armies, and built an empire that stretched farther than any had dreamed before. But Alexander was not only a soldier, he was a dreamer too. Wherever he went, he planted seeds of culture and learning. And here, on this coast of Egypt, he chose to plant something new. He looked at the land and the harbor, and he imagined a city of order and beauty, a city where the wisdom of Greece could meet the ancient knowledge of Egypt, and where traders could bring treasures from every corner of the world. The city would bear his name, Alexandria. With careful planning, the streets were drawn in straight lines, crossing each other like a grid. The great harbor would welcome ships from Greece, from Phoenicia, from the islands of the Aegean, and even from distant India. At its heart, temples rose in gleaming stone, markets filled with voices, with the scents of spices, with the bright colors of cloth and pottery, and above all, guiding sailors safely home, stood a wonder that would later be called one of the greatest of the ancient world, the Pharos Lighthouse of Alexandria. But the lighthouse came later. In these early days, the city was still young, still forming. Alexander himself would not live to see it grow. Not long after founding Alexandria, he set out once more to continue his conquests. He would never return. And yet his vision remained. After his death, his generals divided his empire. In Egypt, one of them took power, Ptolemy, a man of ambition and curiosity. It was Ptolemy who nurtured Alexander's seed. It was he who made Alexandria not just a city of trade, but a city of learning. He dreamed of a library, a place where all the world's wisdom could be gathered under one roof. And so the idea of the great library began to take shape. A library unlike any other, born from the dreams of kings and scholars, built on the shore of a new city, where the desert met the sea. The city of Alexandria was still young, its streets fresh and wide, its harbor alive with sails and masts. But already, the vision of something greater was beginning to take form. When Ptolemy I took the throne of Egypt, he carried with him both the strength of a ruler and the curiosity of a scholar. He looked upon his new kingdom, rich with the wisdom of the Nile, and he remembered the dream of Alexander. This city, he thought, should not only be a place of power and trade, it should also be a beacon of knowledge. And so the idea began to grow, a place where the learning of the world could be gathered, preserved and shared among those who sought wisdom. This was to be the great library of Alexandria. It was not just a building. It was an ambition, as vast as the sea that lapped against the city's shore. The plan was bold, to collect every book, every scroll, every fragment of knowledge from every land known to humankind. Under the reign of Ptolemy II, the dream became action. Ships arriving in Alexandria were searched for books. Any scrolls found on board were taken to the library, where scribes carefully copied them. The originals were kept in Alexandria, and the copies returned to their owners. In this way, the collection began to grow, like a river fed by countless streams. The library itself was said to be part of the Museon, a great temple dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of inspiration, patrons of art, science, and learning. Within its walls, scholars lived and worked. They studied astronomy, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, poetry, and history. They ate together, debated together, and devoted their lives to understanding the world. No one knows exactly what the library looked like. The details have been lost to time, but imagine it now, as softly as if in a dream. Long colonnades of stone, their shadows stretching across marble floors. Rooms lined with wooden shelves, each one heavy with scrolls of papyrus. The faint scent of ink and parchment in the air. Quiet footsteps echoing in the halls. And the gentle rustle of scholars unrolling a scroll, reading by the light of oil lamps. It must have been a place of wonder, a place where the wisdom of centuries was gathered and guarded, where voices of the past were preserved for the future. Among those scrolls may have been works we have never seen since, plays of Sophocles now lost, books of history written by forgotten hands, discoveries in medicine, in physics, in astronomy, that slipped through the cracks of time. The library became a symbol, not only of Alexandria, but of human curiosity itself, the desire to know, the longing to understand, the gentle, endless search for truth. And so the great library was born, out of the dreams of kings, out of the labor of scribes, and out of the quiet devotion of scholars. The great library of Alexandria was more than walls and shelves, more than stone and wood. It was a vessel, filled with the thoughts, the voices, and the dreams of countless generations. Within its halls were stored the wisdom of Egypt, the philosophy of Greece, the poetry of Mesopotamia, and the knowledge of lands farther still. No exact record survives of what the library contained, time has hidden its secrets from us. And yet, through fragments and whispers, we can imagine what might have been there. Perhaps the works of Homer, written on papyrus rolls, their verses carefully copied by steady hands. The tales of gods and heroes, of journeys across seas, resting quietly upon the shelves. Perhaps the lost plays of Sophocles and Euripides, dramas no longer known, their voices silenced by centuries, but once alive in the halls of Alexandria. There may have been the writings of Herodotus, the father of history, recording the stories of nations and peoples. The records of travelers who had seen distant lands, the maps of explorers, their ink tracing mountains and rivers, coastlines and harbors. The library may have held the wisdom of Egypt itself, ancient texts on medicine and healing, on astronomy and the movement of the stars, on the mysteries of the Nile and the building of temples. It is said that works from India were gathered too, texts on philosophy and mathematics, on the cycles of life and the pathways of the soul. From Babylon and Persia came records of the heavens, tables of the stars, and calculations of the planets. Here, perhaps, were the writings of Euclid, laying out the foundations of geometry. The ideas of Archimedes, measuring the world through numbers and imagination. The discoveries of Eratosthenes, who would one day measure the very circumference of the earth itself. The shelves may have groaned beneath the weight of hundreds of thousands of scrolls, each one fragile, each one precious, each one carrying a piece of human thought. Imagine walking through those halls. The air cool and still, the scent of ink and papyrus around you. A silence that is not empty, but alive, as though every scroll whispers softly, waiting for curious hands to unroll it, waiting for eager eyes to bring it to life. Inside the library was not only knowledge. There was wonder. There was possibility. There was the sense that the whole of human experience could be gathered, preserved, and understood. It was a dream made real, a dream that even now, so many centuries later, still captures our imagination. If you listen closely, you may hear it. The quiet hum of daily life within the great library of Alexandria. It was not a noisy place, nor was it silent. Rather, it carried the gentle sounds of learning, of thought, of patient work. At dawn, the first light of the sun would spill across the city's stone streets. Sailors in the harbor called out to one another. Merchants opened their stalls, and the great lighthouse far to the north stood tall against the morning sky. Within the library, scholars slowly gathered. Some came wrapped in cloaks of fine linen, others in simple robes. They were mathematicians, poets, physicians, astronomers, and historians. Men from Greece, from Egypt, from distant lands across the sea, all drawn here by one promise, that in this place knowledge flowed like a river. In the scriptorium, scribes bent over tables of wood. The air was filled with the faint, earthy scent of papyrus. The steady scratching of reed pens marked the hours, as words were copied with care. Sometimes a whole scroll was transcribed in silence. At other times, a reader would sit aloud, his voice slow and steady, while the scribes wrote in unison, their hands moving swiftly, capturing the words before they faded into air. Elsewhere, philosophers debated gently, their voices calm, their tones measured. One might unroll a scroll, reading lines from Homer or Plato. Another would respond, offering his own thought, and so a quiet conversation would ripple through the shaded halls. Students gathered too, young men eager to learn. They listened to their teachers explain the movement of the stars, the weight of objects, the cures of the body. Lessons flowed like the Nile, steady and nourishing, day after day. At midday, the library grew still. Scholars ate simple meals together, bread, olives, figs, perhaps fish brought from the harbor. They spoke softly, or sometimes not at all, content simply to share the silence. In the afternoon, the work began again. Scribes returned to their copying. Scholars returned to their studies. The air grew heavy with the warmth of the sun, and the steady rhythm of pens and voices filled the chambers once more. And then, as the sun fell low in the west, lamps were lit. The glow of firelight danced on the walls, shadows stretching across the shelves. The scrolls shone like pale ribbons, waiting for the night's last reader. Slowly, the library emptied. The voices faded. The lamps were extinguished. And silence returned, a silence vast and deep, as though the library itself was sleeping, dreaming of all the knowledge it held. This was the rhythm of the great library, not just a building, but a living place, with mornings of learning, afternoons of discovery, and nights of quiet rest. A place where the human mind and the human spirit moved together, softly, gently, day after day. Within the library of Alexandria, knowledge was not only stored, but also created. For alongside the endless shelves of scrolls, there lived men of thought and wonder, scholars whose minds burned brightly like stars in a clear night sky. They came from many lands, some from Greece, some from Egypt, others from distant kingdoms. All were drawn by the promise of Alexandria, a city where wisdom flowed freely and where the greatest minds of the age could work together, side by side. One of the earliest was Callimachus, a poet and scholar. He did not only write verses of beauty, but also undertook a task that few could imagine. From the countless scrolls gathered in the library, he created a great catalogue, known as the Pinnaces. It listed authors and works, arranging knowledge into order, so that the vast ocean of the library might be navigated like a map. In this way, Callimachus became not only a poet, but also a guide to the wisdom of the ages. Another figure was Eratosthenes, a man of calm curiosity. It was here, in Alexandria, that he measured the very size of the earth. By studying shadows cast in the desert sun, he calculated the planet's circumference with astonishing accuracy. Imagine him standing in the courtyard, a simple stick in the sand, measuring angles of light, and through this quiet act, revealing the vastness of the world. There was Euclid, too, whose writings on geometry became the foundation of mathematics for centuries to come. His book, The Elements, was studied by countless generations, and even today, his gentle order of lines and shapes continues to guide our understanding. And then Archimedes, whose mind leapt with invention. He studied the nature of levers and pulleys, the mysteries of buoyancy, and the play of numbers. It is said he once declared, "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the earth." In Alexandria, his discoveries spread like ripples upon water. The library may also have welcomed physicians, men who studied the body with care, seeking cures for illness, ways to ease pain, and methods to preserve life. It may have housed astronomers who watch the heavens, recording the dance of stars and planets, wondering at the shape of the cosmos. Each scholar brought his own voice. Together, they formed a choir of learning, a harmony of thought. In the colonnades and gardens, in the chambers lined with scrolls, they shared their ideas, their questions, their discoveries. And though their faces are lost to us now, their names echo still. Callimachus, Eratosthenes, Euclid, Archimedes, each one a thread in the vast tapestry of Alexandria. The library was not only a house of books, it was a house of people, of minds awake, of voices alive, of human curiosity unfolding, softly, steadily, like the petals of a flower in the morning sun. The library was the heart, but the whole of Alexandria was its body. It was not only a city of trade, with ships arriving heavy with grain, wine, and spices. It was not only a city of stone, with grand temples, gleaming colonnades, and the watchful lighthouse standing guard. It was also a city of learning, a city where the spirit of knowledge flowed through its streets like the waters of the Nile. At the center stood the Motion, a great temple to the Muses, goddesses of inspiration and the arts. It was here that scholars lived and worked, surrounded by gardens, lecture halls, and quiet courtyards. The air carried the scent of herbs and flowers, the sound of fountains, the murmur of conversation. In the mornings, teachers guided students through lessons. Some learned the art of poetry, reciting verses in the soft cadence of Greek. Others studied the heavens, marking the paths of stars with careful eyes and steady hands. Still others examined the human body, learning the secrets of health and medicine. Philosophers gathered in shaded porticos, their robes trailing along the marble floor. One might speak of the nature of the soul, another of justice and law. Their voices rose and fell, calm and thoughtful, like the ebb and flow of waves upon the shore. And beyond the scholars, the whole city seemed to breathe knowledge. In the markets, merchants traded not only goods, but also stories of distant lands. Travelers shared tales of India, of Nubia, of the mysterious West beyond Carthage. Scribes bought ink and papyrus. Students purchased wax tablets to record their lessons. Even among fishermen and builders, there lingered a sense of wonder, for they lived in a city touched by wisdom. At night, lamps glowed in the Motion, their flames flickering against stone walls. Through the open windows, you might hear the soft sound of recitation, a scholar repeating lines of Homer, a teacher speaking of numbers, a physician listing remedies in a steady voice. And in the harbor, the lighthouse shone across the waters, its beam guiding sailors safely home. It was not only a light of stone and fire. It was a symbol, just as the library was, a reminder that Alexandria itself was a beacon to the world. To walk its streets in those days was to feel the pulse of knowledge. The city was alive with thought, with learning, with curiosity. Every corner seemed to whisper of discovery. Every shadow seemed to promise that something new might be found. The library may have been the treasure, but the city was the chest that held it. A city unlike any other, a city of knowledge. For centuries, the great library of Alexandria stood as a beacon of knowledge. But like all things touched by time, its story did not last forever. The truth of what happened has been wrapped in mystery, hidden behind the veils of history. No single tale remains. Instead, there are fragments, whispers, and legends. Some say the beginning of its end came with Julius Caesar. In the year 48 before our common era, Caesar arrived in Alexandria, drawn into the struggles of Egypt. In the fighting that followed, he set fire to the ships in the harbor, hoping to cut off his enemies. But the flames, carried by the wind, spread from the docks to the city itself. It is said the fire reached the library, and scrolls, thousands of them, were turned to ash. The words of poets, the discoveries of scholars, the memories of generations rising into the air like smoke, vanishing into the night sky. Others tell a different tale, that centuries later, when the Roman Emperor Aurelian fought to retake Alexandria, the city was scarred by battle. Streets were destroyed, buildings crumbled, and with them, part of the library may have fallen. Still others whisper of a slower loss, that the library did not end in fire but in neglect. that over time scrolls were misplaced, lost, forgotten, that the walls grew empty not all at once, but piece by piece, like sand slipping quietly through an hourglass. And then there is yet another story, told of the 7th century. When the armies of Islam entered Egypt, they found the city of Alexandria. Some believe that its books were ordered burned, used as fuel for bathhouses until nothing remained. But many doubt this tale, for it comes from voices centuries later, and may have been no more than legend. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere between. A fire here, a battle there, a scroll misplaced, a shelf forgotten. Not one single ending, but many small endings, woven together by time. And so the library was lost. No one can say exactly when. No one can say exactly how. But what was once the greatest collection of knowledge the world had ever seen slowly faded into silence. Imagine now the halls, empty of scholars, the shelves bare, the scrolls gone. Only stone walls remain, echoing with memories. And yet, though the library itself was lost, its spirit did not vanish. For even in its destruction, it planted a seed, a longing in human hearts to preserve knowledge, to gather wisdom, to keep the flame of curiosity alive. The great library was gone, but the dream it represented continued on. Though the library of Alexandria was lost to the ages, its memory has never faded. The scrolls may have burned, the halls may have fallen silent, but the dream it held lives on in every place where knowledge is cherished. Across the centuries, humans have sought to gather the wisdom of the world. They have built libraries, large and small, in cities and villages, on mountain tops, and by quiet rivers. The spirit of Alexandria whispers in the quiet of these places. In the gentle turning of a page, in the soft scratching of a pen, in the rustle of knowledge being discovered, you can almost hear it, a voice from long ago, telling us to learn, to explore, to dream. The library also reminds us that knowledge is fragile, that even the most brilliant ideas can vanish if they are not cared for. And so, each book preserved, each thought shared, is a small victory against the endless drift of time. Many of the scholars who lived in Alexandria inspired generations that came after. The ideas of Euclid, Eratosthenes, and Archimedes spread across the world, their lessons carried across oceans and centuries. Poets and writers drew on ancient stories, preserving fragments of voices that might otherwise have been lost. Even in our modern age, when computers hum softly and knowledge flows at the speed of light, the library's legacy remains. Every effort to gather, to catalog, to share what we know echoes that ancient dream, to hold all the wisdom of the world under one roof, so that it may be used to guide the human spirit. And perhaps that is its most gentle lesson, that even if we cannot hold everything, even if some things are lost forever, the act of seeking, the act of learning, and the act of sharing can carry the spirit of Alexandria forward. So, when you open a book, or read the soft glow of words on a page, or listen to stories softly spoken, remember the library. Remember the dream of a place where all knowledge was gathered in one quiet space, and the scholars who walked its halls thinking, learning, and imagining. The library may have vanished, but its spirit, the human longing to know, to remember, to understand, is alive in every one of us. Now, close your eyes and let the city of Alexandria fade gently into memory. Imagine the sun setting over the harbor, its golden light spilling across calm waters. The lighthouse casts a steady glow, guiding ships safely to shore. The streets grow quiet, the markets empty, and the gentle breeze carries the faint scent of papyrus and ink. In the library, the scholars have gone to rest. The scrolls lie quietly on their shelves, their words waiting patiently for curious minds. And though the building itself has long been lost to time, its spirit remains, a soft, enduring light in the human heart. The story of the library is more than a tale of scrolls and scholars. It is a story of curiosity, of wonder, of the gentle pursuit of knowledge. It reminds us that every thought we cherish, every question we ask, every dream we follow is part of a long chain that stretches across centuries. Even in silence, even in shadows, there is beauty and meaning. The library teaches us that seeking is as important as finding, that the journey of learning is a quiet, persistent act of love. Love for ideas, for stories, for truth. And so, as you drift slowly into sleep, carry with you a piece of Alexandria. Carry the soft rustle of scrolls, the gentle murmur of scholars, and the calm, endless rhythm of curiosity. Dream of the halls lined with scrolls, of gardens where philosophers once walked, and of the quiet, steady heartbeat of a city devoted to learning. For the library may have vanished in the world, but it lives on in your mind, in your thoughts, and in the quiet, steady pulse of human imagination. Sleep now, and let the whispers of the past carry you gently into dreams. Let the dream of Alexandria fill your mind with wonder, peace, and the gentle warmth of knowledge. Good night.